This is the joint meeting of the RTM Public Health and Safety and the Finance and Budget Committee. If there's no objection, I'd like to change the order of the agenda by moving item 3, the request for the appropriation and bond authorization for placement of the Darien Fire Department tanker from 3 to 2. Before we get going, can I have somebody from F&B move that?
So moved.
I have Charles P, and then I have Louisa as a second. Okay. Brian.
Yeah.
Your show.
Unfortunately, I don't think I can share the presentation.
That's fine. Everybody's been handed it, and if they haven't read it, shame on them.
Okay.
By the way, they were also given the video of you speaking to the Board of Selectmen. So again, shame on them if they haven't. Mac, you have your 7.
Okay. Oh, good. Steve's in. Good.
Do you want to move the resolution so we're all according to Hoyle or Robert's Rules of Order? One of the two.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we're in favor.
Okay, good. All right, back to you, Brian.
Okay, so the Darien Fire Department, we have a 1996 tanker. We're looking to replace it with it'll be a probably model year 2029, 2030 by the time we see it. The current tanker we got is definitely an older machine. It's starting to develop a lot of problems. We're having some issues tracking down parts. That production of that particular model of the truck has been out of production since the mid-2000s. We are looking to increase the size of the tank from 2,500 gallons to 3,500 gallons. The new truck will have all the same capabilities. It'll just be more modern. It'll have all the safety features that this truck doesn't, airbags, crash rating. We are looking to go with the Seagrave manufacturer because of the quality of the truck that they build. What do we got here? So the truck will be 32 years old by the time we replace it. Some of the issues we're having with the current truck is the fuel tank rotted out on it, and it's going to be a custom thing to have it replaced. I mean, that's the problem when you have older machines like this. Everything turns into custom parts and tracking stuff down. Sometimes we have to source used parts. So the truck's starting to get a little unreliable. We do use the truck, a fair amount. It covers I-95. Covers the districts that don't have hydrants. I looked on the map today. The mapping information could be wrong, but I'm looking at about 50 roads, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the entire road doesn't have hydrants. It only may be sections of the roads that don't have hydrants. So the natures of alarms have changed a little bit, especially with electric vehicles. That's why we're looking to get the additional water on the truck. Electric car fire can use upwards of 10 to 15,000 gallons of water to extinguish an electric car fire, especially on 95, which is one of our primary stretches of highway that we cover. We got an estimate of we got a price of the truck of 1.75. That includes the hose, the tank for the drop tank for the side. So when we're doing a structure fire, they can dump the water on the scene, and then we'll draft out of that. It comes with the hard suction. If we have to draft out of a pond, the truck capable of doing that. We are sticking with the 2-man cab. We're not looking to increase the size of the truck. It will be a little bit longer because of the emissions issues. Back in 1996, none of this stuff existed. Somewhere in the mid-2000s, around 2008, they started implementing emissions on these trucks, which did cause everything to get a little bit larger. We do have some, we have a $70,000 contingency in there for the engine. Unfortunately, we're not sure what engine's going to be in that truck at the time. The manufacturer can't tell us because of changing EPA laws. So there is a chance that the truck could come $70,000 under budget. I mean, that's what we're hoping for. Some of the equipment that's included in the truck is all the adapters for surrounding towns if we had to go mutual aid, the radios, the hose, the nozzles, any other appliances and adapters, some small hand tools. There wasn't a lot of equipment that's going on this truck. That amounted to about $68,000. The reason that I know initially we had the truck posted up for about $1 million on the fire apparatus replacement schedule. That was prior to COVID. And as we all know, COVID definitely caused some severe increases in costs between the raw materials, labor rates, the availability, and hiring. So the truck definitely went up in price. I did look at some of the other manufacturers, and we are right in line with some of the other manufacturers. So I'd like to open up, see if anybody has any questions.
I do want to add one other thing. One of the values of a tanker, when we're having some of these high rises that are coming into town, that does provide some extra backup for stuff that goes there. So, I just add that into the other things that are happening. So,
in one of the previous departments I was in, down in Greenwich, we had a multiple houses on fire down in the Sound Beach area. And we had a significant problem down there. When the power went out, the generators didn't back up the water supply on the hydrants. So we were in a hydrant district with no capability of getting water out of the hydrants. So that entire operation turned into tankers. And I believe it was 4 houses and 2 other small structures that burnt down during Superstorm Sandy. And the entire operation was done on tankers. Tankers are an extremely important piece of equipment in the fire service, especially in a community like ours, where you start getting into the north area and we don't have water supply at everybody's street.
Brian, as far as the actual price, that's solid, even though the delivery is 4 years out.
Yeah. So one of the things I like about this manufacturer is everything what they do is COD. And once we sign contract with this, whether the prices of materials continuously increase, that's absorbed on their end, and there is no adjustments. There's nothing. That's a locked in final contract. We do not have to provide any down payments. There's no progress payments. There's nothing. It's when the truck is delivered. We do a final inspection on it, and as long as everything's okay, then we ask the town to release the funding.
yeah, that's interesting, Brian, that you mentioned that, because, in the old days, pre-COVID, it was like 25% down, 75% when we took delivery, and 18 to 24 months, you had a fire engine. And that just isn't the case anymore.
Why is this a 2025 budgetary item as opposed to a 2029? If we're not going to get delivery for 4 years and we don't have to pay for it, we're not going to bond it and borrow the money now and sit on it for 4 years, are we?
All right, I'll give you the answer on that one. This is an appropriation and a bond authorization. If we just do an appropriation, that means we have to take the money out of the general fund or tax for it. And it would then be sitting for 4 years in the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures, which is considered an allocated fund. And the rating agencies don't like having money sitting in an allocated fund. In this way, we have the authorization to do the appropriation, so they can go and put the order in, and then 4 years later, we can bond it. So it's more of an accounting process of what we're doing,
Okay.
because we have to give them the appropriation or they can't put in the order.
And is there going to be, in 4 years' time, will we be able to sell the 1996 tanker for anything, or is there not really much of a market for 32-year-old tanker trucks?
So, I mean, completely honest with you, I mean, there is a resale value on it. It's going to be very minimal. I mean, I'm also the town mechanic, and you know, I auction off the trucks down here as you know, they become they've hit their lifespan, and I don't foresee us getting anything more than maybe $10,000 or $15,000 for that truck at the time.
Wow.
Wow.
Now, the other thing is we do not record whatever we get until such time that we actually receive it. And I'm just going to mention, Louisa just went off the grid, but Louisa was actually saw one of our last fire trucks. If she comes back on, Louisa, do you want to talk about that? That you saw our fire truck at an auction?
Yes, and sorry, just a lousy connection. Yes, I remember hearing in one of our meetings that the trucks that we use here in this side of the coast are very particular and do not have a high resale value. And I remember looking for some tractors and other equipment. I went to the website where the municipalities put their old trucks or tractors or machines, and I saw the Darien Fire Department truck, and what I was able to see, it was the resale value is really, really low. And I think it went out at the end. It's a public auction, and really, I think it was almost nothing we got.
Would you keep it as a backup? I don't know, like
That was
I don't know
my
if you have room
question.
for it, but
Or is there another volunteer fire department in the area that would need it if we have places that are not covered by hydrants?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Well, could it be saved as a backup or given to one of the mutual aid fire departments, volunteer departments around here that, you know, you needed tankers to go out and do that fire in Sandy and Greenwich, and I could see where you have the need in the north side of town, but would be extra capacity for water to keep that tanker around as long as it's running?
So in a perfect world, if we had a big enough station, we had enough room to keep it. I mean, there could be a theory that we could keep the truck, but unfortunately, you know, all the firehouses here, you know, they're not huge departments. We don't have the ability to keep that truck at any of our stations. Some of the other surrounding communities, Greenwich, Stanford, they already have tankers. Noroton Heights has a tanker. I believe theirs is 1,500 gallons. 15. Yeah, it's 15 or 1,800 gallons. So, you know, we do have the two tankers in town, and with both of those, we're able to, you know, provide significant water to, you know, like we had a fire in Dorchester, we were able to provide significant water until other departments were able to come in with additional tankers. But I mean, we just don't have the capability of holding on to a piece of equipment like that.
You know, I've never met you before, and it's nice to see you here. But I mean, my concern is the cost of this tanker. I mean, volunteer fire departments around the country use milk trucks to haul water. You know, this is a very expensive truck. I mean, and if it's that valuable, why aren't we buying two of them in 2 years when we got to pay for them, sell one of them? Because it looks like they're going to go up in value a lot if it's that valuable today.
Yeah, but that's not the business we're in. And that's the thing, Doug. We don't, and I'll also add that on occasion, if we cannot sell it, we have donated trucks to smaller communities in like Vermont or New Hampshire.
Well, I think we
So-
should donate it to someone who's in our mutual aid network around here who could use it. The thing that I'm concerned with is you said we have to appropriate it before they can order it. Well, they're their own legal entity. Why do they need, I mean, to me, it's a 2029 or issue.
Because the town of Darien is responsible for buying all fire equipment.
And
Done.
what contract is that? What contract is that?
That's the agreement between the fire departments and the town.
Okay, and where's that written? Where can we read that?
Speak to John Zagroski. He'll provide
Okay,
it.
because, but they are a legal entity and they can order a fire truck. I mean, obviously, we're gonna have to pay for it.
No, they don't have the bandwidth to do that. For us giving the appropriation with the subsequent fact that we're gonna bond it, it is not a problem, and we're not changing that at this time. So,
You can buy
you know.
you can buy a fleet of trucks for $2 million. I just can't believe this is that expensive.
it is. So, but as I said, you know, Doug raised certain concerns, and, you know, they're good concerns. But the fact of the matter is we've seen a significant increase in our cost of fire engines. And the Fire Commission is currently in the process of recasting what the anticipated costs of those engines are going forward based upon the new dynamics of what's happening. This is one of the areas where inflation has definitely affected the costs to town, as well as the fact that the consolidation within the three major companies that are publicly traded, there's also a problem that there's not significant enough mechanics to fill the roles to build these, which is why they have a $4 to $5 billion backlog.
They've
Where-
cornered the market and they know it.
Yeah. Must be owned by a private equity guy.
We were just speaking about that. So I was just speaking with my chief engineer, my other assistant chief, and we were going down the list. I believe one of the parent companies owns either 5 or 6 of the largest fire apparatus dealers, and they've literally cornered the market. I think safe numbers are to say that they have $4 to $5 billion worth of backlogged fire engines to be built. The company we're going with, Seagrave, is not owned by any of them. They're an independent fire manufacturer, and we've already purchased the rescue from them, and we've already purchased the ladder truck. The ladder truck was back in 2012. They do a very good job, and they have a high quality control on how they produce and deliver the vehicle. I have not seen significant repairs on the Seagrave ladder truck that we have in the time that we've had it. So that was 2012. So we're probably looking at 12 years.
What did that cost? Because a ladder truck's usually significantly more than a.
So that was back in 2012, and I want to say that was 1.2 million.
That seems.
That was not a complete truck either. That was a remount. They took the ladder off the old Mac CF and they remounted that piece of equipment onto a new chassis, and that was 1.2 million then.
Brian, what would you estimate the lifespan of this tanker will be? 25 years or like
At least 25
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So the pieces of equipment that we're going after for the extended life expectancy that don't necessarily respond to every single alarm, especially like an automatic alarm, which is part of our highest call volume for residential automatic alarms, commercial automatic alarms. Your two engines, your frontline engines, are the runners that are constantly out on the road. Your ladders, your tankers, and your other support vehicles, they definitely can stretch a longer lifespan because we're not using them as much as the two frontline pieces.
And you
if-
start
if-
these trucks every other day or something to keep them operative?
Oh, yeah, they're, I'm not gonna say they're not, they're out a couple times a week, as opposed to the engines, which could be, once a day, it could be 5, 10, 15 times a day. When we get a significant storm where you have a ton of trees down, power lines down, it could be a snowstorm with ice. We've seen upwards of 50 calls in one given storm. So, that's when these trucks are really running, and they're out there for the duration of these storms, responding to calls.
Charles, I also want to add something. Fire engines are somewhat similar to police cars. It's not the age of the police car, it's how many hours the engine has run. So it's not mileage, it's the engine that you're looking at. And when many of these fire engines do go on call, they're running, there. It's not like they shut them down and go from there. So, but most of our fleet is a 20 to 30 year lifespan before we're replacing them. Is that reasonable, Brian?
Absolutely. And Jack, do you remember when we had the consultant come in?
Yeah.
So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, and I don't want to misspeak, but I know that the consultant said that we were keeping our apparatus too long. The commission doesn't seem like we're going to defer from our 20-year lifespan on the engines and 25 plus on the support equipment, meaning the ladders, the rescue, the tankers. So, this truck's going to be, I believe it's going to be 32 years old by the time we're going to receive this. So,
And part of that report was saying, part of the problem was not that we were keeping it so long that the truck didn't work, but over those 20 years, there's new safety and other requirements that, whatever that initial is, the national, whatever fire thing.
FPA.
And yeah, and so we're a little behind on some of the safety. I mean, one of the fire trucks that I recall that it was at Noroton Heights, if you put on the fire equipment and sat on the side, there wasn't enough room for the person to go into that seat.
Yeah, I believe some of their trucks that they just currently were replacing were from the 80s.
Yeah.
They had done some refurbs on theirs.
So, and if we can refurbish it, we'll refurbish it before we buy new. So,
Jack, I assume that it's the town that's signing the contract that is guaranteeing payment upon delivery. Is that
that's correct.
okay?
The agreement we have with the fire department is that we do provide some benefit and payment for all three fire departments, and we try and keep that within a reasonable amount. That's one of the things that they knew. And Brian, do you serve on the commission?
I go to the commission meetings. I do not sit on the commission.
Okay.
I have 3 representatives from my department that sit on the commission.
Okay. So on the commission, I mean, part of what we look to do is like to make sure things are applied evenly. And one of the new things where we're bringing in an assistant to the fire marshal is to assist with the administration of making sure safety reports and other things. That's in next year's budget. But to make sure that all the safety records and other things are done. Because I want to remind everyone, we have 3 volunteer fire departments, and the treasurer on that sometimes changes. And so this is to assist them to make sure that what's going on is right. The town buys the fire equipment. The fire equipment is owned by the town. The buildings themselves are owned by the fire companies. So, and they pick up some costs and we pick up others. So, but we have assisted in bringing fire departments into gas to reduce. We do have them, I believe, buy electricity through our consortium and other things like that. So, But it's been a while since I've looked at the financials of each of the fire departments. But yes, the town owns the fire engines.
Thank you. Just one more question, Brian, just in terms of the wait times and the backlog. Was it similar at the other vendors that you looked at, or the manufacturer?
They're all pushing about the same timeline for delivery. I know it depends on certain manufacturers. Some of them are actually longer. It's just one of those things. I mean, we used to be able to get a piece of apparatus from signing of contract. Realistically, you saw a piece of apparatus in 18 months, and that's just not the way it is anymore. A lot of this changed back in 2018, 2019, and it never recouped.
Got it. But it is available as soon as it can be delivered. So if there was improvements in supply chain or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, the supply. Yes, there's always a possibility it could get delivered sooner. I build a lot of trucks for the town, for the fleet department and everything down here, and sometimes they tell me it's going to be 6 months and I don't see it for a year. It could be 2 years for just a commercial piece of equipment for the town. It's just, we just don't know when these things are going to be delivered, but there is always a possibility it could be delivered a little bit sooner.
Thanks.
So just so you guys know, we didn't just go out and pick this brand. They're on a contract. It's one of the contracts we signed up with probably about 10 years ago now, HGAC network. And I buy a significant amount of trucks and equipment for the town off this contract. So it is a contract that was put out there, and it's every 2 years it's redone. This manufacturer is on this contract, so we know that we're getting a fair price. We are able to see who's paying what for what trucks. So it's not like we just decided this is the truck we want. It just happens to be that this manufacturer is also on that contract.
Lois, go ahead.
Hi, just a small point. I thought I heard that the equipment is longer than the others. Does that provide any limitations on the use of your garage space in the firehouse?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I thought I heard that this truck is longer than the truck.
Longer. It's not significantly longer than what we currently have. We are able to fit it in the firehouse the way that the drawings stand now. Once we go out to the manufacturer and actually do what they call a pre-con meeting, it's a pre-build meeting. That's where we make our final decisions of bumper specs and basically we go through the entire truck and make the final modifications. But that's, when we get out there, there's a couple little things that I want to throw back at them and see if we can shorten it up just to get it, exactly the same length as we have now. But I estimate the truck will probably be about a foot longer by the time we're done with all our modifications and everything.
I do want to add for people that are new, and maybe Brian, you can elaborate on this a lot better than I can. This isn't that they just decided they needed a fire truck and they went out to the catalog to see what they could order. There is about 150-page document where they go through every spec, and I say jokingly, they even determine what screws and screw types are going to be used on this vehicle. So it's a rather elaborate, the study itself, I believe, takes 6 months to a year before they even put it to have the RFP that they can give to the fire departments and the manufacturers to do it. And then the give and take on what they do, what they recommend, what the latest safety features are. Is that a fair description of it, Brian? Because I know you can explain it better than I.
Yeah, so I mean, when we go to build a piece of apparatus or any piece of equipment for that matter throughout the town, you do there's a lot of meetings that we go to. We have to we go out to other departments to see what they purchased, what they like, the pros and cons of every piece of equipment. We bring that back to the firehouse, and then we adapt that truck to fit our needs. So, one of the biggest problems we have in the Northeast area, especially in Connecticut, is the bridges. The bridge heights in town really throw some stipulations on what we could do for apparatus. All our vehicles have to be able to go under the post road bridge. Not all of our vehicles meet the bridge spec for Raymond Street and Leroy, but we are able to go both sides underneath the railroad crossing at the post road. So that definitely throws a wrench in the works when we're building something that, we have to make modifications to the truck to keep it low enough that we can get around town with it. Some of the departments down in the Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, the southern states, their bridge heights down there are generally 14 plus feet, and they have no height restrictions that really come into play down there. And they can run completely different styles of trucks. They can run commercial line pumpers, and it's a lot easier to obtain a piece of apparatus for something down in the southern area where your height restrictions aren't going to interfere.
I'm also going to add, and Brian, I don't recall if it was your department, but sometimes if you look at the areas that are covered by the roads, and maybe it was it may have been the emergency vehicle, that the main one that we just got, that you got. We got to make sure that it goes into certain roads and areas that are a little bit narrower, so that it can do its job. And that's happened on a number of occasions, even when we're looking at what was just done at across from Noroton Heights, to figure out what ladder trucks can make it in there. And so I don't know if you want to expand a little bit on that, Brian.
So out of all the three departments, none of us purchased the exact same piece of equipment. We have three different ladder trucks in town. The Heights Fire Department has what we call a ladder pumper. So they have a 75-foot ladder on their piece of equipment over there, which is able to get into a lot smaller areas than the downtown truck that we have, which is actually a bucket truck. It's got a basket on it that the operators can be up in to either spray water or do rescues, whatever the situation calls for. And then, the Noroton Fire Department, when they went to build theirs, they built a 100-foot ladder truck, which accommodates a lot of the new construction that we're doing. They have the longer reach. It is a bigger truck. Sometimes it's not the easiest truck to maneuver into a situation, but when we can't get that piece of apparatus in, we may bring truck 20 from Heights in. I had a chimney fire on Robin Hood Lane a couple years ago, and I wasn't able to get my ladder in there. It didn't have enough reach, so I wound up calling for the other department to bring their ladder over. So when we're purchasing these pieces of equipment, we also look at the other departments to see what they have and what needs the town has, and where can we make improvements or modify the truck so that we're not all building the same piece of equipment that just goes the same calls. This way it gives us a broader area to try and get the apparatus into all situations. So the same,
or at least
rescues. Go ahead, Jack.
Or at least have one piece of equipment within town that can meet that need. And
Correct. Yeah, there
So-
are three, as far as the ladders go, there are three different pieces of equipment. We only have the two tankers in town. Heights is, like I said, I think it's 1,500 gallons. And then Darien had the 2,500 gallon. Changing the style of the tank allowed us to get an additional 1,000 gallons of water, going from an elliptical style tank to a square tank. allowed us to get the extra 1,000 gallons of water on it, which was huge, without increasing the without increasing the size of the truck significantly. As a matter of fact, the tank that's on the new truck is actually going to be a little bit shorter than the tank that's on the current truck. The reason that the truck is going to be a little bit longer is because of the emissions on the motor and the emissions that has to go underneath it.
Brian, you mentioned electric vehicle fires. Is that a significant problem for the fire department? And do you need special chemicals to put out a lithium-ion battery fire, or do you just drown it with water?
That's a loaded question, because that's something that, you know, the fire industry is still trying to figure out what the best solution for these battery electrical car fires is. We have several different ways to attack a car fire, or, you know, a battery fire in that case. We have these special blankets that we could put over the vehicle to snuff the fire out. It doesn't work all the time, but it is one of the ways that we can attempt to put the fire out. Any type of electrical vehicle fire, you're looking at hours and hours and hours of operation to try to get these vehicle fires under control. And even when the vehicle fire is fully extinguished, when they're removed by the towing company, they're generally brought upstate to one of the facilities for DEEP, and then they sit there for 30 days to make sure that they don't reignite. There are a couple companies that started producing some chemicals that we can mix with water to try to get the extinguishing agent to stick to the lithium ion and other type of battery fires. It's something that we've been, bouncing back and forth. We've been talking with a lot of manufacturers about this stuff. We go to conferences a couple times a year to see who's buying what. It's a revolving door right now. I mean, nothing. The real answer is there's nothing perfect to put those fires out right now. So that's why when I say 10 to 12,000 gallons of water, that's a fair number to say for an operation to put out a car fire like that. I know in Europe they tried doing some stuff with trucks where they would come out and literally pick up the car on fire and submerge it in a tank. Then they found that was causing issues after the fire was extinguished.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, or are we ready to vote and allow Brian to have dinner?
I got a question. Is this a Cummins engine? Is it made in Wisconsin? I mean, what? I don't know enough about it, I guess. But does it come with a pump on it? I mean, or do you just, is this just a water carrier?
No. So this truck's got every capability of an engine. The only difference is it doesn't carry as many people on it. And if I had to try to add the additional cabin space to put additional people on there, this truck would be massive, and it wouldn't fit the needs for our town. We wouldn't be able to get it in any of these backcountry roads, the dead ends, the smaller roads. So there is a pump on it. You got the water tank on it. You have all the capabilities just like an engine. And yes, Cummins is the only engine that I use across the board. For DPW everywhere, it's Cummins. I'm a Cummins guy, and they are a proven motor, and they are definitely the leading in the manufacturing right now. Most manufacturers are using Cummins motors in their production. They're one of the few that was able to meet all the emission standards. And they're a great engine.
Doug, you're muted.
Okay, I'm looking at this company's website, and they are delivering a lot of fire trucks. I mean, there's no doubt they're, as far as a U.S. manufacturer goes, they're supplying a lot of towns with equipment every day. So, I mean, it's really remarkable what kind of business they got going. I know the last fire department I worked for bought a truck like this from China, and it was a mistake. So I really appreciate your comment about the Cummins engine.
Well, so this particular truck, it sounds like you got a little bit of background in some of these vehicles. So when we build these trucks, we try to generally stick with the same drive lines. So they have Allison transmissions, Cummins motors. The axles can vary from a Meritor to a couple other manufacturers. I decided we're going to go with the Meritor style axles. That's the same axles that they're using in the over the road trucks. So, 15, 20 years from now, if there's an issue with the axles, I know that these parts are still going to be available because they've produced so many of these vehicles. So we're trying to stick with commercial line components on the vehicles as opposed to proprietary pieces of equipment. I'll give you a scenario. So the steering gearboxes on the trucks, I've done a ton of them down here at the Darien DPW garage. The salt gets in there, corrodes it, they start leaking. Generally, I can do a steering gearbox for $1,800 to $2,500, depending on the size of it and everything. One of our pieces of equipment is a Pierce. They have a custom-made suspension in there, and it was $15,000 to repair that gearbox. It was a substantial job, and I was truly disappointed on how it was built and how much it cost to repair that. That was one of the reasons we steered away from Pierce, because they started getting into proprietary parts. And when you get into proprietary parts, it's not something I want, down here at the fleet. I want stuff that's going to be available. I mean, even our big trucks down here, we're looking to keep those for as long as possible. And, we got trucks that are 20, 25 years old down here, and we're looking to do the same thing, but you got to go with the commercial line parts.
Thank you very much for that. I have a question for Jack. Would you mind just one more time reviewing the timeline for the appropriation and the bonding again?
Sure. So, actually, this is something that the Finance and Budget Committee started. The town was accruing for fire engines and keeping massive amounts of funds in the reserve fund. And we thought that was a waste of taxpayer money, because what we were doing is taxing people for a fire engine that may not show up for another 20, 25 years. And I kind of believe that the people who have the benefit of the fire engine should be paying for it. So we were able to convince the Board of Selectmen and then the Board of Finance that we approve an appropriation, which, if this committee approves it, Board of Finance is doing this, I believe, on the 11th. It goes before the RTM on the 17th, and we approve it. Just for you understand the full timeline, you have to wait 10 days after an RTM approval for it to be effective, because anyone can challenge any appropriation with there. So you got to wait another 10 days. And after that, we can put in the order. The order is nothing more. When we say the appropriation, that's saying we have a way to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So the way to pay for it is either going to be taxes out of our general fund, because if it's off cycle and we're not taxing for it, or we bond it. In this particular case, the bonding gives us time over the 4 years before we ever have to make a payment. And even when it was 2 years, it made sense to bond, because in 2 years later, and we all heard John's presentation on the debt service. If we decide 4 years from now that we actually want to pay cash for this, we can undo the bond and then put it into our taxes and tax for it and pay it then. Gives us that option. By keeping cash in a reserve fund, the agencies look at that as being allocated money. So when they're looking at what's available for the town of Darien, they sort of subtract that. So, and Louisa can do a much better job of expecting bond ratings than I can. She has a Bloomberg on her desk, which I don't. The fact is that so this gives us time, but they can't put in the order unless there's an appropriation approved. So and we join them together. At one time, we used to do the appropriation and the bond as separate resolutions, but that really wasn't legal because we never really approved how we're going to pay for it.
So you won't actually execute the bond technically until it's due, until the truck is finished, and then we have to pay for it. Or
I'll
do you
actually say it may be 5 years before we issue the bond.
Okay.
Because what we're frequently doing is we take money out of our general fund to pay for some of the smaller projects. And so now this year, when we're doing some bonding, we're actually going to be paying back our general fund for some of the money that we've already taken out, and then bonding for what we have. We try not to bond for anything that we're not going to spend in the next 12 to 15 months. So we'll use our existing reserves, 30 million plus. And remember, it's bigger once we collect tax revenues. If we get 70, 75 million in March, in January and July. And we use that money to pay for some of the projects. And then when we come into April, which actually next week, in March, we determine what we're going to bond at the Board of Finance. And there's a whole list of projects that they're going to be looking. Some we've already spent money on, some we haven't. And then we bond for it. As an example, I think it was last June, we approved $1,425,000 for the master plan for Great Island. There's been about $500,000 spent against that authorization, but we haven't bonded any money on that. So we may first be doing the bond this May. So the Board of Finance will review it at their next meeting. They'll decide what the amount of the bonding is going to be. That gets approved, goes to bond council. They package it, and we'll probably issue bonds sometime in May. So, and we move things together. The difference is we try and do town debt in one area, sewer debt in another, because none of these organizations have the right to issue their own bonds. On the sewer debt, just a little bit of quick thing, it is the proceeds from all of you. Just moved, Violet, so I'm trying to look at where you are.
I'm here.
The proceeds that if you're hooked up to the sewer connection like I am, part of your assessment that you pay in November and possibly April if you're over $500 goes to pay that debt. But it's town debt for the sewer. We keep school debt separate from town debt because the state requires us to report the amount of school debt for whatever we did bonding for the school district to them on an annual basis. So it's really hard to commingle state and town debt when we're issuing it. So we may say we're doing 45 million, which is what I think we're going to be doing someplace along that. And most of that's going to be HHR. So it's going to be one big debt thing, but maybe 40 million of it's HHR. And another 5 million is cleanup of our existing debt. Does that sort of explain it better?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I was just curious how it works. And it sounds like you're going to have to replace the truck eventually. So, it's better to do it now. And I think the average lifespan, it really is about 25 years or maybe a little less. So, I think we need it.
Yeah, and Brian does a good job for keeping these things on the road. I have to admit that. There's a lot of trucks that when you look at it, you know, I've been doing this for a while, and I realize some of the trucks are older than my youngest child. It's in his 30s. So,
Well, Jack, I can speak for our committee. I think we're ready to vote.
is everybody ready to vote? Great. All right, I'll let you guys vote first.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's good. I think we're unanimous. I actually have to abstain
Aye.
because this is a bonding issue. But we are, you know, we've got 6-4 and 1 abstention.
Okay. For F and B, all in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All right, that looks to be unanimous. So it passes. Brian, thank you very much for the time you spent. Thank you very much for the information. We worked with Brian on the other truck that he had before, and sometimes they do give tours of the fire departments. It's a great thing to go and see what's going on there. But again, Brian, thank you so much for spending the time with us. I think you did again an excellent job in explaining beyond this truck. So we'll move this forward.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you, guys. I
Thanks,
really
Brian.
appreciate your time. I really
you.
appreciate your vote of confidence to move forward with this. And as Jack said, anybody wants to come down to the fire station and check out what we got going on down there, you could definitely reach out to me. Jack has my number, and you guys are more than welcome to come down at any time. Please do.
And the rescue vehicle that we purchased is really cool.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much
Brian.
for the
Thank you.
advice and
All right.
good
Thanks,
work.
Brian.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a fire engine meeting, I tend to be. A fire department meeting. Let's move to the next thing. And that is, I'm just going to start out with one thing. You know, this keeps on talking about the retaining wall project, but it's more than the retaining wall. And so with the information that we've distributed to the committee members, you can see that there's a lot more of what's going on. Sean was unable to join us tonight, but he did provide additional answers to some questions and what's there. We actually have more information than some other groups do, because we did get the engineering study, which and it will be, that engineering study will be distributed to the full RTM. We discussed that at rules, because I think that provides significant information. So before we get started and we can discuss, I need somebody to move. Noroton Heights Fire.
Jack, we can't hear you. You're talking away from your mic.
Nah. There's a lot of people who wish that they could say that I do that more often.
I was going to say yes, but you know, I can't hear what I'm agreeing to.
You get to share my desk in the Board of Selectmen. Be careful.
I feel honored.
All right, the resolution appropriating $2,006,100 for costs associated with the Noroton Heights Fire Department retaining wall replacement project, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $2,006,100 to meet said appropriation. For F&B, do I have somebody moving this?
So
I have
moved.
Louisa. Do I have a second on this?
Second.
I got Bill on this one. Bill Smith isn't
Can I
here, so I
clarify?
just need to.
It's $2,006,000 or $2,600,000?
No, $2,006,100. The incremental costs from the analysis that we all gave in the presentations is bond cost issuance. So that's added on as part of the bonding. There was also an amount added on for the fire engine. So, and that's determined by the Director of Finance, who also happens to be our town administrator, and may be doing about 4 other jobs also. Now, so, but that's standard. So I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at the response that we got from Sean, just discussing that the old wall needs to be removed as well as the railroad tie walls. That this is going to be built such that should the department wish to expand its footprint and get rid of that bridge, that could be used as a foundation wall. We'd like to add that on the firehouse, the engineer designed it to hold a building on top of that wall. There is a chain link fence that will be attached to the base of the wall. There are also, if you know, on the highways where you see those metal road barriers that are on the sides, that will also be added to make sure cars don't go off the 17-foot cliff. The fact of the matter is that it is fixing the it's removing the old wall, building a new one. It's also removing, fixing the foundation to the bridge that's going across. They're going to be taking some of that out and replacing it. On the pedestrian entrance, side entrance, there were pictures of corroding steel beams, including bearing beams there. All the that steel will be replaced as well. Just going through finances on this briefly, and I use round numbers. I'm not getting into pence. The base bid for fixing the retaining wall and the railroad tie walls will not be replaced with railroad ties, but a new compound wall there is going to cost $1,441,000. We're going to fix the bridge, and that area will cost, and the side entrance into it will cost another $296,000. And to put in the chain link fence is going to be approximately $11,000. There's a construction phase administration where that's the engineer and other people that are looking at it. That's going to be another $155,000. From start to finish, it's estimated to be a 62-week project. There will be a building committee established by the Board of Selectmen. All town projects that cost over $1 million require a building committee to be put together. I do not know who's going to be on it. There are special inspections that will be done by an outside company, as well as the town's building inspection. That's estimated to be another $65,000. There's some town fee that we have to pay really to the state. The town has waived its fees to this. There's some additional cost to the engineer, and there's a contingency about $28,000. There's other contingency built into the base bids and that. So this is what we're anticipating to be the max cost of this project. The total came out to $2 million. As I said, $6,100 will be used for the bonding of this. So again, this is something that we'll initially be using our general fund funds to pay as this is going on. And I would not anticipate that an actual bond is issued until sometime in 2026. So again, we're giving the authorization for them to do the work, and then the bond happens afterwards, subsequently. We don't go out and bond things as soon as we get it. So we like to bond what we actually spend. So just as an example, we mentioned this in something else. If this project ends up costing $1.8 million, we will only bond $1.8 million. And the remaining $200,000 will be, and the word of what we do, rescinded, be rescinded and taken off the authorized but unissued bonds for the whole town. So open up the floor for any conversation, discussion. And yes, I know that a lot of people have heard that $2 million is a lot of money for a retaining wall. But this is, as the commercial used to say, it ain't just paint. This ain't just the retaining wall.
Well, Jack, to your point, it's really interesting that that building is not built on solid land. It's really built right on the hillside. So that's why there's always been an issue with the fire trucks themselves and the weight of them. But it's so important to fix this retaining wall and the things that go into the building as you were describing. It's a huge safety issue.
Yeah, it was built in 1950, so the anticipated length for this should be, they mentioned in the Board of Selectmen meeting, should be another 75 to 100 years for a wall. Now, I'm not going to be around to see if that's the truth, because I'm crotchety now. You can only imagine how crotchety I would be then. But, that's what we're being told by the engineer.
But someone might still be collecting your Social Security.
That's if
pay for the walls.
That's if we still have Social Security. Sorry, that was not a political comment. That was just this has been reviewed by the engineer to make sure everything looked right. Ed Gentile has looked at it, and Kate Bush, town administrator, also reviewed this. Added at the Rules Committee, Public Works will also be reporting on this now. They'll be speaking to Ed to get his opinion, but I'm from working with Ed on projects in the past. Ed looks at this stuff with a fine-tooth comb. So he may not be associated because he has a lot of things on his plate. Between Public Works, there's some sewer projects that's going on, and what his responsibilities are for the police department, and the other things. But he does look at it. Doug, go ahead. Unmute. Yeah, good.
Okay. This has been going on. This has been a problem for quite a few years, it sounds like. Is it becoming more of is it like a crisis now? Is it like because 50 some years you've had this situation, and is this an emergency at this point? Or how do you describe we don't have a lot of time on this, it seems. It just came up. I'm new. I had never heard of it before, but it seems like it's something that we just got to do quickly, or it's going to cost even more.
And that's correct. Back in, and I put down the date here. Just got to get to my note. In March of 2023, we authorized the payment of an engineer to do a study and an evaluation of it. This did come up. This is off cycle, but this does qualify for an off cycle expenditure because we've been talking about this for over 2 years. And at this point, if you look at the top part where the cars are parking, the parking lot is starting to sink into the 17-foot drop. The main wall, I ask this just because it helps me understand what's going on. The wall is about 80 feet long and 17 feet high. So this is a massive doing with reinforced concrete. But yes, Doug, we got to do this. So I don't know, Jim, Mac, do you want to make a comment on this also?
Well, I just agree with you. When we toured it before, there was clear evidence of the big blocks that are holding it. Some of it's cement blocks, some of it's stonework. If it were to give way in a big way, you'd really have a sinkhole right up on the Noroton Avenue. The whole thing would cave in.
Yeah, and I hate to be a little bit selfish on this, but that's the fire department that serves my house. So it's also where we vote for District 3. Violet, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I looked at the pictures and it does look quite urgent. I think I just had a question. I feel like I read that. I mean, were there multiple bids that we could compare, or is there only one bid that we're looking at? I know that I agree with you that you want the right kind of wall built. It feels it'd be good to have a comparison, and I don't know what that looks like.
So, while I know how to hammer a nail, again, Violet, you just, while how to hammer a nail, and I'm pretty good in certain construction, being my own general contractor in our redo of our kitchen, this is beyond my construction capabilities. But we only got one bid. And that's why it was important to have the engineer who did the study, as well as Ed and Kate, review every aspect of the bid package and negotiate. Now, this bid we received back in like June of 2024, and we were able to keep, providing we're approving this now, we're able to have that same bid being used, even though the bid is approximately 9 months old. So that's good, because otherwise it will cost us more.
So we went out for bids, but only one company bid. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. But that's why it was very important to have everybody review it, of the people that, really do this on a thing. But yeah.
Yeah, Lois?
The description says retaining wall, and we've all understood that it's a lot more than the retaining wall. But my question is, should that description be changed when we do, because we're going to use bonding based on this resolution and stuff. Are there implications that would be just cleaner if it said something more than, I think somebody put out something about a wall, something else. There's a different description, and it's not for our voting. I'm more concerned that if we're going to go out for bonding, does it look ridiculous, or is there any consideration for that?
Well, being one of the few people in town other than Jim Palin who actually reads our bond resolution. All right, Louisa does it too. The fact of the matter is the resolution does cover everything that we're talking about on the construction.
Okay.
So, and that's detailed in what's going on there, so that when it goes, the resolution is written not by Wayne, our town council. It's written by bond counsel for all the aspects of what we need, both from a description of what the project is, as well as making sure we're approving all of the attributes you need to on a bond. So that the two resolutions, that one we just did and the one here, is written by bond counsel, not by town council.
Okay.
And when would this work start?
I believe it gets to start with some additional negotiation and everything. Again, 10 days they can start to go and move it in after we approve it. So I'm assuming sometime in April. Now, one of the things that they're addressing, because this came up in the Board of Selectmen meeting, District 3 uses that site, even though it's out of district, for where we vote for elections. And around the area of where they're going to be doing walk at the pedestrian entrance and the wall itself is the ADA compliant ramp, so that somebody who needs a wheelchair or otherwise can access the area that we use for voting. And so the two voter registers of voters are looking at that, making a determination, which we would need to get Secretary of State approval to move the District 3 voting location for the November election. But it looks like the 25 election might need to be moved, but it should be back in 2026. And quite honestly, having voted there for a lot of years, it's a really good place to vote, and it has ample parking people to do it if you don't take advantage of the early voting. Go ahead, Peter.
So this is just a general question for you. So I'm listening to the project. We're looking at, the retaining wall. It's really a foundation wall because you can build on it.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anybody talk about the town's potential liability should the wall collapse, should some catastrophe happen. Is there a risk analysis that goes on? Because I look at this and go, if we don't spend the $2 million and something goes wrong in the next 6-8 months, not only will we be spending the legal bills defending the liability, it'll probably be a penalty amount because it's a known risk we took no action on. So I'm just curious, how does the town look at this stuff? Because I think that's a consideration that doesn't seem to come up in these conversations.
I can't answer for how the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance looks at this, but I think Mac mentioned it as well, because if that wall goes, that part of that road is going with it.
And it may take a pedestrian, a car, and could take a life.
As well as the fact that these fire engines aren't necessarily the lightest vehicles in the world, and there's some structural issues with the bridge that they drive over to get to a fire. So, and I think that's part of the increase in the cost, is that at the same time they're taking a wall down, they got to keep the soil and everything where it is to make sure that that's not coming down with it. So I think, that's part of the cost of why this at $1.5 million to
I'm
just
not arguing
replace
cost.
it.
I'm just saying I've never heard anybody in my short time on the RTM discuss the actual liability risk the town is taking if it doesn't take action.
Well, I don't think we advertise that we can be sued. But
And yet we know the town gets sued all the time.
absolutely. But yes, I agree with you, Pierre. It's a good observation that this is at the point where we got to fix it.
This is why I asked.
Pierre, I would say
Go ahead.
as a layman, there's probably issues all over town every day with things that come up with our roads, with the winter time and whatnot. So there's always a ticking time bomb somewhere. And I have to believe that we have, we have insurance, as a town for those kind of things.
Yeah, we do, but still, it's good
And
to
we
fix it.
self-insure.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's good to fix
absolutely,
it.
Well, my
Just there.
question of when they start, because of that risk of loss will probably shift to the contractor after they take control of the project.
Yeah, that's true.
I will be honest with you. That is beyond my pay grade and my expertise. But I've also learned not to argue with attorneys who are on this committee, and we have quite a few. So, Doug, I'm not. I think you raise a good point. Knowing your background definitely that does help. So that is an issue. Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry. I should have recognized you.
No problem, Jack. I just wanted, you said before that there's going to be funds coming out of the general account. Is it just mechanically, how does that work? It comes out of the general fund to pay construction along the way, and then at the end of the project, we bond it and pay the general fund back?
Yep.
Okay.
It like, think of the general fund as being the checking account. And so, you're sort of paying for something, and then, and then you're paying for your home, you're paying for redoing a kitchen, which is a really interesting project to do. And and then all of a sudden you say, you know what? I've been using my savings in that, but at that time, I'm making more in the market than I am there. So I'm going to go take my home equity out and repay my savings. And basically, that's what we're doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
I just have one question. I know that we're appropriating, an X amount of dollars, but let's say we go over. What's the mechanism? Because anytime you start a project, even like many renovations that I've done in my home, I always go over budget. So
I actually didn't, but that's because I was capable of
good
doing
for you.
some things. And the other thing
Mhm.
is, I have a good friend who's a general contractor, but I wanted my plumber, my electrician, and my painters to do the work instead of having somebody else come in there, because my guys were the ones who have to fix it if something goes wrong. So we had a pretty good tight thing on that. But here's how to deal with it. If it's over by a little amount, let's say 5% of this, so it's over by maybe $50,000, the amount of money can be paid for by the contingency in the reserve fund for capital and non-recurring expenditures, and they can transfer 50,000 to do it. Or they come back to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM, and we go and give more money. In fact, on the HHR project, we did about 20 mil to get the thing started. Then it went to 40. Then we were pretty sure 65,000 was going to do it, until Chris Price and Jill came back when they had the final project, because certain delays, they found more things out. And the current bill that we approved was $103 million, of which we said jokingly, we like seeing both of them, don't come back. So, and they have contingency built in there, but what they found in that interim period would have eaten up their entire contingency, and they would have had to come back anyway. So if it's significantly over, they have to come back, and they have to come back as soon as they know they're going to be, not when they spend the money, because they're not authorized to spend that money.
Okay, I see. That's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? We're good to go? All right. F&B, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously. I'll ask, are there any no's? Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, we pass. Okay, yours, Jim.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Good. I'm abstaining. Again, because it's a bonding issue. But I think we're good.
All right. Public health and safety, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Before you guys go, you are returning to a meeting, I believe on the 19th. You guys are going to join us again, Matt?
I think so.
Okay, so TGSNA has come to a new part of Appendix B, and so we're going to ask the Public Health and Safety to rejoin F&B on our scheduled meeting for March 19th, which is again on a Wednesday, so that we can go through that with the two committees. And
that's the Appendix B, right?
Yep.
Okay.
You'll get a copy of that about a week before that meeting, which it's an interesting read. It's only 11 pages, but it's only half of the 11 because it's two-sided, you knew. But it's always a pleasure to have you guys. I think your committee and our committee has done the most joint meetings of any committees in the RTM over the last 5 years, and we're proud of it.
Jack, is that
say,
at
I'm not sure
7:30
is
also?
that good or bad?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think I voted for the wrong committee vote though.
That's all right. We'll count it twice.
The meeting's at 7:30 on the 19th?
Yeah, it's on 7:30.
Okay.
So Jack, you're going to continue with talking about capital projects and also some other things. I'm going to adjourn our meeting, but anyone on our committee can stay and listen in if you want to. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay. So all in favor of we adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Have
Okay,
a good
thanks
evening,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
All right.
Sharon, thank you.
So I'll go on to the next two things and I'll do them rather quickly. It's late. And I was really hoping this was like a half-hour meeting. So, I passed around John's presentation on debt. I know John mentioned that we were doing debt for the longest term that we could. If we're building a new school, we have the option to bond for 30 years. Because these schools are renovations, we tend to do it for 20 years. There's also a philosophy that, and I mentioned this at the last, yesterday's Board of Finance meeting, near the end, when somebody said, can't we do something for 22, 25 years to reduce the amount of debt that we might have on any particular bond issue? And the answer is no, because in 20 years, we're going back to add money into that school. And we don't want to have 10 years more that we're still paying off when we're putting more money in to fix what we just did. If it's lasting for 20 years, we'll pay it. That's the cost for running the town. So I wanted to get that all of the school debt service that John was talking about is planned to be on 20-year notes. Great Island is a 30-year bond. So that is the difference there. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is take a look at that document. If you have any questions, send them to me and we'll forward them to John, and John will give us answers. Or, we can go to our dual town administrator, director of finance, Jen. But I try not to overburden her as she's doing two jobs and she's in the middle of budget. So, we have to be cognizant of that. I say jokingly with her that I typically don't call her on Mondays because that's when she's setting up a week for both jobs. So, but she's really super. And quite honestly, as a director of finance, she's going to be very hard to replace. I mean, just, for those of us who worked with her for the last 10 years, she really is good at what she does.
When will she retire? Not soon, right? I hope.
No, she has a young child that I don't know, Bill, you might actually know, but I think her son is about between 10 or 12 years old or so, something in that area, like 12. So she's around for a while. At least I hope so. And so, that's good. So I'm going to ask you to look at that. You've been getting emails from me on speaking to people. Louisa and Pierre, where there you are.
The library. Mm-hmm.
I happened to run into Kira from the library today, and I'm going to be passing you some additional information. That'll typically be a Zoom meeting with the Board of Finance, and I requested that Kira make sure that we know when that Zoom meeting is, so that we can participate with the Board of Finance on that.
Perfect. Because last year it was, Jim wanted to have it just with the library, and then we...
Yeah, I told Kira it's better to invite us because
Yep.
if she doesn't, she's coming to my committee and we ask tougher questions than.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
So, yeah. So, no, Kira's good. She's,
It's
I was
fantastic.
not fond of her predecessor who was director of the library. And, but she's absolutely super. In fact, to tell you how good of a manager she is, I walked into an area because I was going to use the fax machine there. And she was sitting at the desk. So she goes around for about an hour or two to each of the service desks and sits there and performs the service throughout the library, just so she can interact, see what people are wanting, see what's going on, understand. And to me, that's tremendous leadership for how she manages that organization. and really good for employee morale in that. So,
and transparency. Yes.
yeah, she's really super. I will also mention, because there's some things that a lot of people don't know. Our library has agreements with a lot of museums that allow you to get a pass that then you can bring like 4 people into the Met or 4 people into MoMA, and it's free, or take kids down to Beardsley Zoo. But there's about 20 organizations that they have free passes for people in town that if you didn't know about.
I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't know either after I just paid
Yeah.
for a
No, it's great.
Met thing. But yeah, it's really good. And in fact, she just mentioned during the winter break, all the passes were out. I mean, they were all being used, but it's a good thing to you check it and you have it for 2-3 days. I think one of the botanical gardens it also includes. So there's quite a lot of things that they have. A couple of other things for the kids that are there that are really good that we have there. So
The Bloomberg terminal is a big asset also for many.
yeah. So so that's good. So please start contacting people by writing an email. I'm just telling people what the group is. Obviously, if you have Jenny is going to be reaching out. Taylor Carter, who was also at one time part of our committee and vice chair on education, she likes to do like Zoom meetings, like on a Saturday, go through all of them, which is good. Rob is an expert on this stuff. He was the vice chair of the Board of Selectmen side of our team at one time, and then I told him it was less work being on the Board of Finance, and so he went there, and he does admit that it is. They meet once a month. He's good in communicating what's going on, and same thing with Malin. So there's enough people to do it. On the Mike and Bill, I sent out the email on the Park and Rec budget. And then Patty said, well, everybody was there. Virtually everybody who was on that email was at that meeting where you all discussed the budget already with Jen. And I said, well, I actually was sending it over to Dan. And then joking, since Patty's his wife, that, I kind of figured Patty gave him what information he needed to know. So you guys just get together and figure out what's going on there. The big issue is we're waiting to hear what the revised cost for Weed Beach is without part of that path to reduce that. And at yesterday's meeting, John Zagroski moved the pear tree project, which he had listed originally at $10 million, down to $6.6 million, which was the last known estimate we had for it, with the understanding once it gets approved so we can get new bids, it will be increased. But, rather than just putting some big number out there of 10 million, we're at least going to have the starting point of where it was last. So that's something you guys can discuss about what's going on there. Other than that, just get in touch with your people. I have more that are coming out because I have to get my mind into a mindset to write 20 emails that are exactly the same with just different names. But they should be all out by tomorrow. With that, are there any other questions or other things going on? We will discuss the Board of Ed budget and what we'll start to do once I get the schedule of when the Board of Finance is discussing topics. We want to have, if you have questions on any of the budget areas that you've looked at, just send it to everyone in that committee saying, here's a concern, here's an issue, or I'm good with what they got, go from there. Yes, Louisa.
They mentioned, John, that they may change insurance from United Healthcare to the Connecticut state. Why
Yes,
has not been that before done? It really has been such a big saving, and we know that the library has been using it already for some years.
that's
Why
correct.
hasn't been looked?
I think there was some discussion about it, but United Healthcare had given us, it's the increase that we're getting now. Part of the
The
problem
12%.
is there's two things that have to be done. So, well, I'll say three. Number one, if we go with the state insurance, we have to sign on for 3 years. So that's a given. You can't go out and rebid in that
Okay.
3-year agreement. The second thing is, we have to have, I'm trying to think what they call it. I think they refer to it as a discrepancy model. So they look at what's the doctors and other services that are on the United Healthcare and compare it to what's on the state to see, oh, this doctor is no longer on, or this one is, or vice versa. And then they have to bring that discrepancy to the various town unions for them to review, because it's a slightly different plan. That's what's in our union contract with them. So we need the union to take a special vote to allow us to make the change from United Healthcare to the new organization. So that actually, I know John's trying to get this all done before April 8th, but if he does not, then this committee will be making a reduction to the Board of Selectmen budget on the night of the budget vote in May. Basically, John saying cut this amount. And
For the 500,000.
yeah, we'll make whatever it comes out. It could be 450, whatever it is. We'll make that adjustment there. I know John isn't fond of this, but should we not have the income estimate for the bonds that they're going to be issuing? The $3 million that we currently had listed in the Board of Selectmen budget did not include the new bond issue that they briefly discussed yesterday, and they will vote on March 10th. But then that gets issued in May, and then we have to figure out what the drawdown schedule is on that for Joan Hendrickson, who's our treasurer, to do a calculation of what the earnings on those bond funds will be, because that amount was not put into the calculation for investment income. If that gets done prior to April 8th, that will be adjusted by the Board of Finance. If it is not done, there is a way that the board, that the RTM can record incremental income. And the way we do it is we would reduce the mill rate by an equivalent amount to record that income without specifically saying, allocating it. It then subsequently gets allocated. That is not the preferred way that the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance likes us doing it, but we've done that before.
Yes, a couple of years ago, right?
Well, the first time that I was, we've adjusted the mill rates because we've done cuts.
Mhm.
But the first year I was chair of this committee, the governor had reduced our funding by a certain amount of money, about 20 towns. And then subsequent to the Board of Finance vote, returned the money. And F&B came to the Board of Finance and the First Selectman and say, we want to recoup some of this and not tax people when we know we're getting back $500,000. So we did adjust the mill rate by 2 to 3 basis points to account for some of that. We didn't get all of it back, but we did have some of it. That's not the preferred way to do it, but there is also a chance that that would. That brings us up to date, an hour and a half. So at this time, are there any other questions, or are we good to go for everyone celebrating Ash Wednesday? Have a happy and good holiday. And I won't get religious about it, just recognizing that it's there. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So I have Pierre, boy, everybody's doing that one. Pierre and Mike in favor.
Aye.
I have a good weekend.
Aye.
See you in a week.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
Or 2 weeks, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.